The first time it happened, I didn't understand what she was really asking for. I only knew the way her hands felt, steady, almost gentle, when she held my face like she was checking for damage, not permission. "I want you," she said. Not loudly, not dramatically, like it was something she'd already decided and was just informing me. But that came later. Before any of that, there was a Tuesday afternoon that smelled like burnt coffee and motor oil. I was at her brother's repair shop because my car wouldn't start again. Same issue as last month. Same stupid clicking sound. I'd already apologized twice for taking up his time when he waved me inside, wiping his hands on a rag like it was nothing. The place was narrow and loud, radios buzzing from somewhere in the back, tools clanking, a fan rattling like it might give up any second. That's when she walked in. She didn't look like she belonged there, not because she was dressed fancy, but because she moved like the noise didn't apply to her. Calm, observant. She stood by the doorway for a second, scanning the place, then smiled when she saw her brother. A real smile, the kind that starts in the eyes. "This the friend who keeps breaking his car?" she asked. Her voice wasn't teasing, just curious. I wiped my hands on my jeans, even though they weren't dirty. "Yeah, that's me." She looked at me longer than necessary, not in a flirtatious way, more like she was reading something I hadn't said yet. Then she nodded, like she'd found it. "I'm Lena," she said. "His sister. Mid-40s, maybe. Confident without trying. No rush in her movements. No apology in her posture. She wore a simple coat, hair pulled back loosely, a faint crease between her brows that made her look thoughtful, not tired. We shook hands. Hers was warm. She didn't pull away right away, either. Just held on a beat longer than expected, eyes steady on mine. The rest of the afternoon moved strangely slow. Her brother went back to work, disappearing under the hood, and somehow Lena stayed. She leaned against a workbench, asked me what I did, listened when I answered. Actually listened. When I talked too much, she didn't interrupt. When I stopped mid-sentence, she didn't rush to fill the space. At one point, the shop went quiet, radio cut out, tools paused, and the silence felt heavier than the noise had been. I noticed the way her fingers traced the edge of the bench without realizing it. She noticed me noticing and raised an eyebrow slightly, like she was amused I'd been caught. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said too fast. Then, quieter, "Yeah." She smiled at that. Not wide, just enough. When her brother finally called us over, she stepped closer so I could hear him over the engine. Her arm brushed mine. Not accidental. Not exactly intentional, either. She didn't move away. Later, as I was leaving, she touched my shoulder to stop me. Just one finger at first. Then her whole hand. Firm, grounding. "You should fix that clicking sound before winter," she said. I nodded, distracted by how close she was. As I walked out, I realized I couldn't remember a word she'd said after she touched me. And for reasons I still don't fully understand, that small, quiet moment followed me home and stayed. The second time I saw her, it wasn't accidental. Her brother asked me to help Lena move some old boxes out of a storage room behind the shop. "Just for an hour," he said, already turning back to an engine like the decision was done. She didn't argue, just nodded once, slipped her coat off, and tied her hair back with a rubber band she pulled from her wrist. Up close, she looked more tired than I remembered. Not worn out, just stretched thin, like she'd been holding things together all day and hadn't let go yet. The storage room was colder than the shop, concrete walls, one flickering bulb. Dust hung in the air, catching the light every time we shifted a box. We worked quietly at first. She was efficient, precise, lifting with her knees, brushing dirt from labels before stacking them again. I followed her lead, trying not to feel like I was intruding on something private. "You don't have to be so careful," she said eventually, watching me adjust a box for the third time. "I don't want anything breaking." She smiled at that, small and brief. "You're considerate." The word landed heavier than it should have. There was a distance in her that day. Not cold, controlled. She answered questions, but didn't offer much. When I tried to joke, she laughed politely, then went quiet again. Still, I noticed everything. The faint shake in her hands when she set something down too fast. The way she exhaled slowly before lifting a heavier box. How she rubbed her wrist once, like it ached. At one point, I offered to take over. She hesitated. I'm fine, she said, but her voice softened on the last word. I didn't push, just stood closer, ready. We took a break sitting on overturned crates. The bulb hummed above us. I handed her a bottle of water. She took it, fingers brushing mine, then paused like she'd realized what she was doing. Thank you, she said, quieter than before. She drank slowly, eyes on the floor. I'm not great at asking for help. I didn't think you were, I said before I could stop myself. She looked up then. Really looked. Something flickered across her face. Recognition, maybe. Or surprise. Most people don't notice, she said. The room felt smaller after that. When we finished, she stood very still, brushing dust from her palms. I watched the motion, the care she took, like she was grounding herself. She caught me staring and didn't call me out. Just tilted her head slightly. You're observant, she said. Not accusing. Almost careful. I shrugged. You make it easy. That earned a soft laugh. Tired, but real. She turned toward the door, then stopped. For a second, I thought she might say something else. Instead, she reached out and adjusted the collar of my shirt, fingers lingering just long enough to feel intentional. Don't read too much into things, she said gently. I nodded. But after she walked away, her touch stayed with me. Light, restrained, and impossible to forget. The third time felt accidental again, even though I knew it wasn't. Her brother had closed the shop early because the power kept flickering. A storm was rolling in, not dramatic, just steady rain that turned the streets dark too fast. I was already there, helping clean up, when Lena checked her phone and sighed like she'd been holding her breath all day. Looks like I'm stuck for a bit, she said. Traffic's a mess. She said it to the room, not to me. Still, she stayed. We ended up in the small office behind the shop, the one with mismatched chairs and a desk that wobbled if you leaned on it wrong. Someone had left a space heater running. It clicked on and off, too loud in the quiet. Rain tapped the window like it was trying to get in. She took off her shoes without comment and tucked her feet beneath her on the chair. I noticed a faint line across her ankle, like she'd been wearing something tight all day. I noticed everything. I didn't say any of it. We talked about small things. Her brother as a kid. My first job. How neither of us planned to be where we were. She laughed once, unexpectedly, covering her mouth like she was surprised by herself. The sound lingered after it stopped. Then her phone rang. She didn't look at it right away, just stared at the screen while it buzzed in her hand. When she finally answered, her posture changed, shoulders back, voice controlled. I told you not to call me, she said quietly. I looked away, suddenly very aware of how close we were sitting. I could hear the other voice through the phone, muffled but sharp. She didn't argue, just listened. Her jaw tightened. One hand clenched in her sleeve. No, she said. That's not fair. There was a pause. Her eyes closed. I'm tired, she said. Then, softer, please don't. She ended the call and set the phone face down on the desk. Didn't move for a moment. I'm sorry, she said eventually, not meeting my eyes. That wasn't. You don't have to explain, I said. She nodded, grateful maybe, or relieved. She rubbed her hands together once, like she was cold even though the room was warm. I hate when he does that, she said. Shows up in my head like he still has a key. I didn't ask who he was. I didn't need to. Silence settled between us. Not awkward. Heavy. She looked at me then, really looked, like she was deciding something she didn't want to decide. You're very kind, she said. You know that can be dangerous, right? I swallowed. Only if you let it be. Her lips parted, just slightly. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, close enough that I could smell rain on her coat, something clean underneath. My heart started doing something stupid and loud. She lifted her hand, hesitated halfway, fingers hovering near my wrist. For a second, the world narrowed to that space between us. Then footsteps echoed from the shop floor. A voice called her name. She pulled back immediately, hand dropping to her lap, expression smoothing over like nothing had almost happened. Looks like we're not alone, she said, standing too quickly. But as she walked past me, her fingers brushed my arm, so light it could have been an accident. It wasn't. By the fourth time, silence had stopped feeling neutral. It had weight now. Shape. It followed us around the shop, settled between us whenever we were in the same room. We were careful with each other in a way that felt louder than touching ever could. It was late again. Not stormy this time. Just dull, gray evening light bleeding through the windows. Her brother had stepped out to grab food. Said he'd be back, whenever. The door rolled down halfway behind him, leaving the place dim and unfinished, like a thought cut short. Lena stood at the counter, sorting receipts that didn't need sorting. I leaned against the tooled chest, pretending to check my phone. Neither of us was fooled. "You're quiet today," she said without looking up. "So are you." She smiled faintly. Then it disappeared. "That's not the same," she said. I watched her hands. They weren't shaking, but they were tight, gripping the edge of the counter like it might slide away. I pushed off the chest and stood a little closer, not enough to crowd her. Enough to matter. "Did I do something?" I asked. That got her attention. She finally looked at me, and the look held longer than it should have. There was something tired in her eyes. And something else. Something careful. "No," she said. "You didn't." She turned away again, stacking the papers too neatly. That's kind of the problem. The words hung there. I didn't rush to fill the space. I'd learned she noticed when I waited. "We can't keep doing this," she said quietly. "Doing what?" She let out a slow breath. "Pretending this is just convenient." I felt my chest tighten. I didn't think it was. She nodded once, like she'd expected that answer. Exactly. The room felt smaller. Not claustrophobic. Intimate in a way that made honesty unavoidable. She crossed her arms, then uncrossed them, like she couldn't decide what to do with herself. "You watch me," she said. Not accusing, just stating a fact. "You notice things I don't want noticed." "I don't mean to, I know." She cut me off gently. "That's why it's hard." She stepped closer. Not touching. Close enough that I could see the faint lines at the corners of her eyes, the way her jaw tensed when she swallowed. "I'm not in a place where I should be anything to anyone," she said. "Especially not you." "Because I'm younger?" I asked. Her mouth twitched. "Because you're kind." That landed harder than I expected. She reached up, then stopped herself halfway, hand hovering near my shoulder before falling back to her side. The restraint in that movement did something to me. Something painful. "I don't want to hurt you," she said. "I didn't say you were." She met my eyes again, held them. There was no softness left now, just truth. "I can't tell if you don't see the edge we're standing on," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Or if you see it and you're willing to fall anyway." I didn't answer. I couldn't lie, and I couldn't say the thing pressing against my teeth. She waited, then nodded, like my silence had said enough. When she finally stepped back, it felt like something had been taken from the air. "I need you to understand," she said, hand on the door, not opening it yet. "Whatever this is, it's already dangerous to me." She paused, eyes flicking back to mine one last time. "And the worst part," she said softly, "is that I don't know how to make myself want it to stop." The shift didn't announce itself. It came quietly, like most things that change you. It was a voicemail. Her brother had stepped out again. "Parts run," he said, and Lena was alone in the office when her phone buzzed on the desk. She didn't reach for it right away, just stared at the screen like it had startled her. "You don't have to." I started. "I should," she said. Not defensive. Resigned. She put it on speaker without asking me. Maybe she didn't want to be alone with it. Maybe she didn't trust herself to hear it privately. The voice was older. A woman's. Calm. Careful. Tired in a way that felt earned. "Lena, it's me. I know you won't call back. I just wanted you to know I found the photo. The one from the lake. You look happy in it. I'm glad you had that, even if it wasn't with me." There was a pause. Breathing. Then, "Take care of yourself. Please don't disappear again." The message ended. The room felt suddenly too still, like the air had settled around us and refused to move. Lena didn't speak. She picked up her phone, turned the screen face down, and pressed her palm over it like she was grounding herself. Her shoulders sagged, not dramatically, just enough to show the effort it took to keep standing. "I'm sorry," I said, because silence felt wrong. She shook her head. "Don't be." She sat down slowly, elbows on her knees, staring at the floor. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Unarmored. "She died 3 years ago," she said. Not suddenly. Slowly. Enough time to say everything except the things that mattered. I didn't ask who she was. I stayed quiet. That felt like the right kind of care. She was my partner, Lena continued. 10 years. We planned things. Houses we never bought. Trips we never took. A pause. I stayed after it got bad. Everyone says that like it's noble. It didn't feel like that. Her fingers twisted together once, then stilled. After she was gone, people kept telling me I'd done the right thing, she said. Like love is something you measure by endurance. I sat closer, not touching, close enough that she didn't have to raise her voice. You look at me sometimes, she said suddenly, eyes lifting to mine, like you still believe love is light. I swallowed. I don't know if I believe that. She studied my face, really studied it. You remind me of who I was before everything got heavy, she said. And that terrifies me. I wanted to say I wasn't a memory, that I was here, that whatever this was, it wasn't borrowed from the past. But none of that felt honest enough. Instead, I said, I don't want to be a replacement. Her breath caught, not visibly, internally. I know, she said. That's what makes it worse. She stood, walked to the window, rested her forehead against the glass. When she turned back, her eyes were wet but steady. I don't miss her, she said. I miss who I was with her. The words settled between us, heavy and irreversible. She stepped toward me then, not into my arms, just close enough that our knees almost touched. Promise me something, she said quietly. What? If this goes anywhere, she said, voice barely holding. It can't be because I'm trying to feel less alone. I nodded. My chest ached with the weight of it. She reached out, not to hold me, but to rest her hand briefly over my heart, like she was checking something fragile. That, she whispered, is exactly why I'm scared it already has. The night it finally settled between us, nothing dramatic happened. No storm, no confrontation, no moment where the world seemed to pause on purpose. Her brother locked up early and tossed me the keys without thinking. Bring him back tomorrow, he said, already halfway to his truck. Lena stood beside me, arms folded, watching him go like she was making sure the ground stayed under her feet. We didn't say we should leave. We didn't say we should stay. We stayed. The shop was quiet in a different way now. Not tense, not charged. Just honest. The lights hummed. Somewhere outside, a bus passed, tires hissing against wet pavement. She sat on the old couch in the corner, the one nobody used because it smelled faintly of oil no matter how much it was cleaned. I sat at the other end. There was space between us. We didn't rush to close it. I've been thinking, she said after a while. I waited. I keep trying to name what this is so I can control it, she continued. And every name I come up with feels like a lie. I nodded slowly. I keep telling myself I should want less. She looked at me then. Not searching, just present. That doesn't sound fair to you, she said. It doesn't feel fair, I admitted. But it feels honest. She leaned back, eyes on the ceiling. I don't know how to do this without hurting you. I don't know how to not try, I said. Silence followed. Not the dangerous kind. The kind that listens. She shifted closer, just an inch. I felt it more than saw it. I don't want to be rescued, she said softly. And I don't want to rescue you. I'm not asking for either, I replied. She exhaled, long and slow, like something in her chest finally loosened. Then maybe, she said, almost to herself, we just sit here and let this be what it is. I turned toward her. Our knees touched this time. Neither of us moved away. She rested her forehead against my shoulder. Not collapsing, not clinging, just there. Her hand found mine without ceremony. Fingers warm, steady. She didn't lace them together, just held on like it was enough. We stayed like that for a long time. No promises, no plans, just shared breathing and the quiet understanding that whatever came next wouldn't be accidental anymore. When she finally lifted her head, she didn't pull her hand away. Tomorrow will be harder, she said. I know. She gave a small, tired smile. Good. We locked up together, walked out into the cool night side by side, not touching now, but close enough to feel it. As we parted, she paused, looked at me like she was memorizing something she didn't want to forget. This doesn't fix anything, she said. I know, I answered. She nodded once, then leaned in, resting her forehead briefly against mine. No kiss, no rush. Just a quiet, deliberate choice. And somehow, that was enough to change everything. I'm telling this from a quieter place now. Time passed, not in a dramatic way. Just mornings that came whether we were ready or not. The shop stayed the same. The couch still smelled like oil. Her brother still complained about parts arriving late. But something in me shifted, settled, like a muscle I hadn't known I was holding finally relaxed. Lena didn't disappear, and neither did I. What changed was the way we moved around each other. Less guessing, less pretending. We stopped circling the thing we both knew was there and started treating it with care instead of fear. There were days we didn't talk much at all. Days when she'd glance at me from across the room, eyes tired but steady, and I'd know exactly what kind of day it had been without asking. We never labeled what we were doing. That was important to her. Maybe to me, too. It kept things honest. Present. I learned that closeness doesn't always look like passion. Sometimes it looks like making space. Like knowing when not to reach for someone. Like sitting through silence without trying to fix it. She learned, slowly, unevenly, that letting someone see her wasn't the same as being needed. That she could be wanted without being consumed. That care didn't always demand sacrifice. There were still hard moments. Still nights where she pulled away and mornings where I wondered if I'd misread everything. But the difference was this. When doubt showed up, we didn't let it do the talking for us. Once, weeks later, I asked her if she regretted it. Us, whatever version of us existed. She thought about it for a long time before answering. No, she said. But I regret how long I convinced myself I couldn't want anything new. That stayed with me. I stopped confusing intensity with depth. Stopped thinking love had to feel like falling to be real. What we built wasn't loud. It didn't demand attention. It asked for patience. And in return, it gave something steadier than I expected. Sometimes we still sit on that couch after closing. Not touching. Not talking much. Just sharing the end of the day. Occasionally, her hand will find mine again. Same simple grip, no ceremony. Every time, it feels earned. I don't know where this leads. I'm not pretending I do. What I know is this. Some connections don't arrive to save you. They arrive to meet you where you are and ask if you're willing to stay awake through it. I was. She was, too. And that turned out to be enough. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?